It is said in the ancient legends that if one subscribes to this channel, great things will await them. Complex by Joshua Wagner. I live in an apartment complex and weird things have been happening. Over the past few days, I've been noticing a lot of the residents have been getting really irritable. They snap at each other over the smallest things, and I've been noticing other stuff too. People's pets keep running away. It seems like every time someone opens a door, there's a cat or a dog trying to bolt out and take off. And people keep talking about smelling rotten eggs. So they brought in some guys to check for gas leaks, but they didn't find anything. We still don't know where the smell is coming from. Today I saw two men get into a fight in the hallway in front of my apartment. It's not unheard of to see the occasional fight in the building, but both of these men were known for being really nice and got along with everyone, especially each other. So word got around about it pretty fast, and that seemed to just make everything worse. By 6 at night, people on the first floor had started to take sides and get into fights of their own over it. Neighbors shouting across the halls at each other, more shouting coming from the walls of the apartments next door. It was starting to get on my nerves and make me anxious. So I called this lady on the 6th floor who I babysit for a lot, and asked if she needed someone to watch over her daughter for the next few nights while she was working late. This was mostly just to have an excuse to get away from all the drama unfolding on the ground floor. Luckily, she did. So I'd get a break from the slowly boiling chaos of the bottom level. When I got home from school today, the first floor was still getting worse. I could hear the shouting before I walked through the entrance. Several people were standing in the hallway screaming at each other so loud I thought their throats might start to bleed. I managed to squeeze past them and run to my apartment to get a change of clothes and a few other things, like this journal, before heading to the 6th floor. On my way, I started to notice things out of the ordinary. Or at least I thought I did. Like I could have sworn I saw some of the overhead fluorescent lights flicker red for a second as I passed by the door of the basement. But they can't do that, right?
"Hey man, you here? People have been going missing real late at night,"
I heard one man say to the other in the hall as I passed.
"They leave their apartment to go get something or meet someone and just like that, gone."
I kept listening as I walked. I've been up here for a few hours with Kathy, or Kat, the girl I'm babysitting, and she told me she's been having nightmares for the past few nights. I think all the fighting downstairs is getting to her. She's been really fidgety and anxious ever since I got here. She keeps talking about a scary man whispering to her through the door. I'm not going to lie, that's not something you want to hear any little girl tell you. But we all have different kinds of nightmares, I guess. A few minutes ago, Kathy called me over to the window.
"Look, there's no outside,"
she said. So I got up and walked over to see what she meant, thinking she was trying to tell me that there wasn't anyone outside. But when I got there and looked out, there was just blackness. I took a second and closed my eyes, thinking they just needed time to adjust from the light of the TV to the darkness outside. "What are you talking about? There's several people down there," I said to her. Then I noticed that the people standing in front of the building were acting strange. Some were pointing and seemed to be talking loudly with each other.
"You saw it, didn't you? There wasn't anything there,"
Kathy asked as I looked outside trying to make sense of what was going on. I told her her eyes were just playing tricks on her and that it was time to go to bed. After I got her to go to sleep, I noticed there were some flashing lights from outside and looked out the window again to see now there was a police car outside, and the people from earlier were talking to them about something. Must have been another fight, I sighed to myself as I slid the curtains closed and walked back over to the couch to watch TV. Today as I got back to the building, I had almost run to get through the halls to get to my apartment. It looked like all the adults had started arguing again, and there were police there now, wrestling people to the ground and escorting them outside. Apparently 2 of them had gotten so mad at each other that it came to blows and the police were called. I could barely even make out what they were all shouting about anymore. I was starting to feel sick just being inside the building on the ground floor, and couldn't wait to get upstairs to Kathy. I finally made it upstairs, but I heard something really strange. Another conversation between a couple of people near the elevator. One of them was talking about how over the past few days they've been noticing men in suits leading other men with bags over their heads down to the basement. Always 5 men with bags, always just before 3 a.m. And one of them always stands guard in front of the door, never letting anyone near it and flashing a weird badge when they got too close. What's going on in this place? Kathy's mum called a little while ago after I'd already put her to bed and said she would be working longer than expected, which I didn't really mind at all. But then that changed when I called my mum to tell her that I would be babysitting longer than I told her I would. When she heard that, she said,
Good, stay up there. Don't you come back down here right now. Half the people down here have lost their minds.
As she said that, I could hear screaming coming from the hallway, like people were rioting just outside the door. That was around 11. It's almost 2 now, and I can't stop thinking about what the people next to the elevator were saying. Dwayne, one of my friends from school who knew I was babysitting tonight, just came by and asked if I had seen his mum. He said she went downstairs a little while ago to get something out of the car and hasn't come back yet, and he can't call her because she left her phone. Remembering what my own mum said earlier, I told him he shouldn't go looking for her and just to stay up here and wait for her, that she probably ran into someone and got lost in conversation. Dwayne didn't listen. He waited for a little while, but then went downstairs anyway. That was about an hour ago, and I don't think he's come back yet. But I think I can hear people running up and down the halls outside. I don't know what to do. Everything happened so fast. Kathy woke up a little while ago and told me that the outside is gone again, and this time I was sure of it. When I looked out of the window, there was nothing there. It's just blackness. No light, no shadow, nothing. I don't know what it is. I was too afraid to open the window, but I didn't get a chance to. Suddenly my phone rang and I checked to see that it was from my mum. I almost wish I hadn't answered it. No, I do wish I hadn't. As I touched the accept button, all I could hear was a torrent of screams and chaos erupt from the speaker. I kept listening, hoping to hear her voice, but it never came even as I heard other noises in the background. Sounds I couldn't recognize that chilled me to the bone. But I still kept listening until I heard what sounded like the phone being kicked across the floor and the other end of the line clicked off.
What's wrong?
I heard Kathy ask from where she was balled up on the couch. Nothing, I lied, trying to hold in my tears. Just try to get some sleep. You can stay in here with me if you want to, sweetie. I told her as I closed the curtains to keep from looking into the inky void just on the other side of the glass. Kind of glad I have this journal with me. It's helping me keep at least some sort of calm and focus, even if it's just a paragraph here and there, and have to keep it together for Kathy. Dwayne just came back. He's in the bathroom right now. Kathy was almost asleep when I heard a frantic banging on the door, followed by Dwayne begging for us to let him in. He was covered in blood. Some of it coming from a large gash in his leg. I still can't believe what he told me. What the hell happened to you? I shouted as I opened the door and saw what he looked like. But at the first time he didn't answer. He just pushed me out of the way and ran into the room. I'm not supposed to let anyone in here, I yelled after him. But he just grabbed the doorknob and slammed it shut behind him. It doesn't matter anymore, he shouted back at me as he latched every lock he could. Help me with this, he demanded, trying to drag a heavy cabinet in front of the entrance to barricade the door even further. I tried to get him to stop and talk to me, but he screamed and said he wouldn't tell me anything until I helped him. All the shouting was starting to make Kathy cry, so I helped him push the cabinet into place and then insisted he tell me what was happening to him. At first, he just ran his hands through his hair and slid his back down against the wall, leaving a long, bloody stain on the pristine white. I went to try and find my mom, he said, staring blankly at the door. The elevator wasn't working, so I tried to take one of the staircases. I only made it as far as the second floor, but then I heard someone run through the door and into the stairwell under me before I could get down to the first. Then something came up behind them. What do you mean, something? I don't know. I didn't get to see it, but it made this noise I've never heard before. And there were more screaming, and all the lights were flashing and turning red, and I just ran. I just ran out of the stairwell and onto the second floor, but that was a mistake too. It looked empty at first, so I was going to try and run to the stairs on the other side of the building and get to the first floor that way. But I wasn't halfway there when I first saw one. Then his voice really started to tremble before he got quiet for a while. I went to the kitchen and got him a glass of water whilst I waited for him to start talking again. He took a long drink before speaking. I didn't notice at first, but all the lights for several yards in the hallway were all glowing red. In one of the rooms, the door had been broken in. There was blood everywhere, even out in the hall. And there were, I don't know, some kind of footprints or something leading out of it and into another room.
You're scaring me,
I heard Kathy say from her place on the couch. I'd forgot she was there for a second. It's gonna be okay, baby. You don't need to listen to all this anyway, I told her, putting a headphone on and playing a movie on the tablet for her to watch. Dwayne hadn't so much as looked up. He was still gazing down at the tile floor, where I noticed blood was flowing from the open wound on his leg. We need to do something about that, I told him. I don't think there's a first aid kit in here, but some of the towels and tape might work for now. So after I put some disinfectant on his leg and bandaged it with a clean towel, he began to talk again. I could hear it inside, moving around, and then it started to come out. So I panicked and ran into the other room, and what? I asked, egging him on. There were people who lived there. Everywhere. There were pieces all over the place, even the Anyway, I hid in one of the closets. Wait, you're saying people were killed? I interrupted. We should be calling the police or something. I'm not finished, he went on. I never got to see what it was, but I could smell it, I think. It smelled like rotten eggs or fireworks or something. It was so bad, I almost couldn't keep from coughing. But once it finally left, and I was sure it was gone, I had given up on making it to the first floor and just dashed back to the stairs, hoping I could at least make it back here. Somehow I made it to the door, but I ran into this guy who I guess had the same idea. So I asked him if he knew what was going on, and he just said he didn't know. But people were dying all over the place, and it keeps getting worse. Then he felt like it was safer the higher up you go, and that nobody can get through the doors or the windows anymore. But we took too much time standing around, and that thing from the inside of the room tried to come through the door at us. It got the guy and pulled him back out into the third floor. Almost got me too. He finished, looking down at his bandaged leg. What do you mean by it? I don't know. I can just tell it isn't human, he answered, his voice still trembling. Do you mean like a bear or something? No, not a bear or something. How the hell does that explain what's going on outside? He shouted, pointing over towards the curtains drawn over the impenetrable blackness just on the other side of the glass. Oh yeah, I wasn't thinking about that, I said to myself. I think we should go to my apartment, he suggested, the thought being that his room was too close to the set of stairs and too far away from the other. So we had an equal shot to either set of the stairs if we needed to leave or run for some reason. Hey, Kat. Baby, we're gonna go with Dwayne for a little while, okay? I told her, quickly gathering up some of her things in a small bag. Then me and Dwayne both moved the cabinet out of the way and unlatched all the locks. But I made sure to take the key Kat's mum left there with me just in case before I locked it back up. We made it into Dwayne's apartment, but there was something out there. As I turned the key to lock the deadbolt to Kathy's apartment, we heard something from around the corner. Something getting closer. We need to go, Dwayne whispered loudly as the lights near the corner began to turn deeper and deeper shades of red. I took off right behind Dwayne, Kathy in my arms. We had just enough time to get to the door and open it before I flung myself in behind him. He quickly but quietly shut the door, latching every lock he could. We all stood in silence, holding our breath as the narrow sheet of light that peeked out from the threshold began to glow the same sickly red. We stood until the shadow of some unseen figure passed by slowly, only feet from us, making the thick wood of the door seem impossibly thin in the moment. We didn't so much as shift in space until the shadow was long gone, and the light turned to its old, soft white. After that, we slid another cabinet in front of the door and piled more furniture behind it until it touched the wall on the other side of the room before any of us even thought about saying anything. I remember thinking how glad I was that Kat was abnormally quiet for her age. I feel like the last thing we needed right then was for her to freak out. "What's going on around here?" asked Dwayne once we all gathered together in the living room. "Do I look like I have any idea what's going on?" "Well, how long do you think it's going to last?" I tried asking again. "I don't know. But I think we have enough food here to last a little while. And the power's still on for whatever reason. So we have that, and..." He trailed off, turning the nozzle on the kitchen sink. "We have water, at least for now." "Do you think everyone else on this floor knows what's going on yet?" I wondered out loud. "I'm not sure, but I don't think so. It's just after 3 and most people are asleep right now." "Do you think we should tell somebody, just in case?" Dwayne looked like he was about to answer, but he was stopped by a banging and shouting from outside. It sounded like it was coming from down the hall near the stairs. It sounded like several people pounding on the door, screaming for someone to let them inside, begging desperately for help.
What's going on?
I heard another voice shout from the opposite end of the hall.
It's 3 in the goddamn morning!
Then we heard more voices start to join in as others were woken by the noise. "I'm going to go see," I said, sliding the cabinet just enough to let me through the door. Dwayne tried to grab me, but I was already in the hall with the gathering crowd by then. I managed to squirm my way through the group to see 3 men who had been beating everyone awake. They too were all covered in blood. And they were cut and scratched almost to pieces, and their clothes were torn to shreds. They were all struggling desperately to catch their breath, and even from where I was standing I could see they were shaking violently.
"Please, get inside and take us with you!"
One suddenly shouted.
"You don't know what it's like down there. Everyone is dying. People are being..."
But I didn't hear much what he said after that, because all my attention had switched to the fluorescent light behind him, as it slowly began to change an awful, sickly red. He must have noticed that everyone had shifted their focus and slowly turned to face what emerged around the corner. As we all held our breath, the figure of an old man in a yellowing white bathrobe, wearing one of those old fishing hats, walked into view. He was hunched over, but not like he had a back problem or something. No, it looked like he was carrying something much heavier than his own body on his back, that was steadily trying to crush him under his weight, and it was taking every ounce of his strength to stay upright. But even still, he wore a wicked grin filled with rotting teeth almost hidden amongst the dirty white beard and mustache. We all stood in silence as the old man shuffled over to the guy who had just been speaking and softly placed a hand on his shoulder. Almost immediately, the man began to convulse, screaming in agony as he fought just to stay on his feet as he hobbled towards the rest of the crowd, pleading for help. And then, as he began to quicken his pace, he fell. As he hit the floor, his skin ruptured, melting and splashing away from his body as the skinless body still tried to claw and drag its way forward as the muscle flayed off the bone and intestines wriggled and slithered towards us like snakes before they themselves decayed into pools of rot. By then, everyone had begun to shriek in panic and run wildly back into their own rooms, horrified by the unbelievable sight. But still, he clawed his way forward until there was nothing remaining but a single skeletal hand, clawing painfully until even it stopped and vanished into dust at my feet. Frozen, I looked up to see the old man laugh quietly to himself as he walked into the staircase. the lights returning to their original color as he disappeared behind the door. It's been several days since I've written anything in here. After writing what happened that night, I just couldn't bring myself to add any more until now. After the events in the hallway, almost everyone decided to leave the building, against Dwayne's warnings and pleadings. Only about half the people who went down came back up. They're all barely able to speak for a long time, many almost completely lethargic. It wasn't hard to understand why. Many children who went with their parents came back without them, and many parents who went with children. It didn't take long after that for people from the floors beneath us to make their way up, almost as if they were seeking refuge from rising waters. Then they started talking with the people from the top floor, and things made even less sense. Some saying that they've been trying to reach this floor for days, weeks even, as if this thing had already been going on long before that night. "You mean it felt like weeks?" one of the floor residents would ask.
No, you don't understand. There was something wrong with the halls. It was like a maze, and I couldn't figure out how to find my way around. Here, look at my phone,
the man said, pulling out his phone and turning on the screen to show the same date as everyone else has.
But I was sure it'd been.
Think about it, man. How would that even work? Another resident asked. Look, we're all going through some stuff. Maybe it's one of those stress-induced delirium things. Soon after, someone made an observation that's been key to our survival ever since.
I noticed something, actually. I think it might help.
The young woman with the long brown hair who had escaped the lower floor spoke up.
It might be nothing, but I noticed that everything kept getting worse and worse until around 3 a.m., and then it started calm a little after 3. So, I think whatever's going on, the closer to 3 a.m., the worse things get. So maybe the closer to 3 p.m., the slower and calmer things get.
And I imagine you aren't going to be the one to test that idea, are you?
A man closer to Rage shouted from the crowd.
And I guess you're going to send one of us men down there to run around and see if it was right or wrong, huh?
I already knew who it was. One of the guys from the building who was always being so obnoxious that everyone knew him and nobody liked him. Or at least, normally. Because almost immediately someone agreed with him.
Yeah. I don't want to have to go down there and get killed just to test it out.
The man shouted at the woman. Then several others started to join in, and they kept going on and on and on until she looked like she was almost ready to cry and definitely regret saying anything. Until,
"I'll go,"
which caused a ringing silence to wash over the uproar.
"Look, if all you adults are gonna do is bitch about it, then I'll go. I'm faster than you chubby old bastards anyway."
"But what about your leg?" I whispered into his ear. Somewhat glad he stood up for the woman, but not thrilled that he was pissing off a group of easily agitated men who we were now trapped here with.
"It's fine. I could still run on it. It was just bleeding a lot."
"What if she's actually wrong?"
"That's why it's a good thing I'm fast enough to get away if I have to."
We kept talking as the adults resumed their arguing, trying to make sense of what was happening. But I didn't think any of them had any better ideas than we did. In the commotion, Dwayne grabbed my wrist and led me over to the woman.
"You sure about this?"
I'm as sure as I can be under the circumstances, but that's how it seems. I've been noticing every night for the past few days that people have been getting more and more restless around then, and it's usually calmest at the opposite time. I can't help but feel like it's related.
When she said that, it made me think back to the men I heard talking downstairs. "Hey, have you heard anything about what's going on in the basement?" I asked her.
No, what do you mean?
"I heard these guys talking earlier by the elevator. One of them said that for several days, just before 3 a.m., he saw men in suits leading people with bags on their heads down to the basement. And if everyone's saying it gets worse the lower you go, maybe it started in the basement. What could have been going on down there?"
"Well, I don't imagine anything with bags over someone's head is something with a positive goal in mind. But I think we're past the time about worrying about that. We need to figure out what to do next," Dwayne said. "So, 3 p.m.?
Yeah, That seems to be when everything dies down the most.
Okay, so we'll wait in my apartment, and when 3 rolls around, I guess I'll go find out if you're right. You can stay in here with us if you don't already have a place to go on this floor, he told the woman.
It turns out she didn't, so she ended up waiting in the room with me, Dwayne, and Kat until it was finally time.
What do you think the black outside is?
The woman, who we'd learned was named Christina, asked after a few hours of sitting around.
I'm really trying not to think about it too much,
I answered nervously, my mind steering towards the horrifying thought by a question. I don't think I want to know, I added, looking towards the curtains that covered the window. Once the clock started to near 3, we all gathered outside into the hallway, many of the others on the floor letting their curiosity get the better of them. Dwayne stood in front of the stairwell door, eyeing his watch, one of the large knives from the kitchen clenched tight in his other hand. At 5 minutes to 3, he grabbed the door and pulled it open.
Well, here goes,
he said, giving us one last look as he walked into the staircase before craning his head down to see what might be waiting for him. Then the door closed with a soft bump, the signal that all we could do now was wait.
You know it's on you if he dies down there,
the obnoxious guy from earlier said to Christina several minutes later. Whether they agreed or not, nobody else seemed willing to say anything to him about it. Even Christina just turned back to face the door once he stopped talking.
So you're just gonna ignore me, huh? You're expecting me to run down there and get killed on a hunch earlier, and I'm not even worth speaking to?
He began shouting.
Nobody's asking you for anything, except to be quiet and wait like everyone else.
She finally spoke back to him in frustration, which didn't help his temper. By then he had started to stomp towards Christina, which managed to inspire several other people to step between them in an effort to stop him. Once he started to settle down a little, the door to the stairs swung open a few minutes later. Dwayne stepped into the hall with a perplexed look on his face.
You made it back.
Was she right? I asked, running over to him.
Wait, what is it?
I noticed his expression.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet. At least down to the 2nd floor. I couldn't make myself go to the 1st, but something still isn't right,
he almost said to himself. What isn't right?
There's something happening to the bodies. I saw a lot of them all over the place, but it's like they've been decaying for days or even weeks. They even smelled like it. And the further down I went, the worse it got. It started to look like the building was, oh no, older than it should be or something. Everything is making less and less sense,
he tried to explain. Once he told everyone that it looked like Christina was right, and that we could rest easy on the upper floor around 3 p.m. and explore the lower ones down to the 2nd, the 4 of us went back inside the apartment to count our supplies. The only thing we knew for sure is that we didn't know how long it would last, and that it was possible we might run out of food before it was all over. It's been a few days since then, and things haven't gotten any better. Several people tried to run down and snatch supplies, and a few others decided to try and escape as soon as Dwayne came back. But they must have lost track of time or something, because we didn't see any of them again. The day before yesterday, someone stabbed someone else in the hall. I'm not sure who did it or why, but I could hear the commotion and several other people did too apparently. But by the time we got out there to see, they were gone. And today, I heard somebody try to climb out the window. All I know is that something snatched him out through the window and into the dark. Or at least half of him. And every night around 3 a.m., we can hear that old man in the bathrobe slowly shuffle his way through the halls. Kat's freaking out, begging for her mum. Christina is still here. Things have gotten so hostile she's afraid to even walk into the hall. But at least we have someone to watch Kat, so we can go downstairs and look for supplies with Dwayne. I'm starting to shake when I think about it, though. That's part of why I'm trying to write some more in my journal. Calm my nerves a little. Get my mind off of it. Dwayne told me that pretty much nothing seems to happen about 10 to 15 minutes before and after 3. So we have about 30 minutes of actual safety to get down there, look around, and leave with whatever we were able to find. We're about to leave soon. But we have to leave early, before it's completely safe and before everyone else starts to begin their search. We have to wait until everyone else has came back and have gone to their own apartments. That way, they don't try to take what we found. Luckily, nobody likes staying out in the hall longer than they have to. Well, we're back. That's the first time I've been and seen what happened for myself. And Dwayne was right. Nothing adds up. And I wasn't expecting so many bodies. The lower the floor, the more bodies we found. It looked like it started with people dying in their rooms, and the sounds they made woke the others around them, who then tried to run and escape. And it seemed most didn't make it past the second floor. Almost like something was keeping them from the first floor, or perhaps they were taking long in the stairwell, so they gave up and tried to run to a different stairwell, but there was already something waiting for them on the second floor. The smell of the second floor was unimaginable. The decay of hundreds of bodies piled on top of each other. I tried not to focus on them too close. Every time I did, I saw something I didn't want to. Things that make me think what could have happened if I had panicked and tried to run with a cat like the rest. It makes me sick to my stomach to see their faces contorted and rotting, the eyes seemingly long decayed from their sockets. Then I saw the wallpaper. It was aging too, yellowing and curling as it fell away from the drywall. "Dwayne?" I asked. "Do you think the food down here is aging too?"
I don't know.
I haven't got any from this floor yet, but I hope not. It won't be good for us if it... He stopped speaking as he started to round the corner and threw his hand up to stop me. "What? What is it?" I whispered, his eyes wide in terror as he mouthed.
I don't think the 3 p.m. rule works here anymore.
I peeked around the corner to see for myself, and had to put my hand over my mouth to keep the sound of my own shock quiet. We were both looking down the hall, strewn with bodies, and at the other end the old man in the bathroom, still bent over as if pressed under an unbearable weight. He was smiling that horrible yellow smile as he grabbed some random bodies, dragging them near one another before he reached down and began to arrange them. Once he was done, he stood above the pile and let out a deep, raspy breath that bathed the corridor in the stench of rotten eggs and burnt hair. Then the pile started to move. It began to twitch at first, a sharp jerk in between slow, rolling undulations. But then after a few seconds, it started to get up.
Go now, we need to get to the higher floor,
Dwayne whispered to me as he pushed me back the way we came, but it was already too late. We could hear the thing getting closer.
"In here,"
he said, pulling open one of the maintenance closet doors and shoving me inside before following behind me. "Shh!" He hushed me with a hand over my mouth as we listened to them, whatever it was, move around on the other side of the door. It kept creeping around just outside, not allowing us to leave. Several times we could see its shadow pass in front of the door as it felt its way around the hall. Some time passed like this, before Dwayne showed me the screen on his phone. 4:02. We should have been back to the top floor by now, but we were still trapped. Several minutes later, Dwayne whispered something to me.
"Okay, we need to hurry and get out, so the next time that thing passes heading the opposite direction of the stairs, I'm gonna crack the door and throw one of these cans to distract it. I don't think it can see. I think that's why it's feeling around out there. I'm not sure if it can hear or not, but we'll know when I throw something. And when I do, we both run for it. Don't look back, just run."
"Okay," I whispered as he handed me a crowbar he found in one of the tool bags.
"Hold it by the curved end so it doesn't slip out of your hand if you have to swing at something,"
he told me as I took it from him. We waited a while longer until we saw the shadow pass by, going the right way.
"Remember, don't look back,"
he told me as he turned the knob and pushed the door open as slightly as possible. Then he peeked his head out before sharply pulling it back in.
"It's closer than I thought,"
he mouthed to me before finally stepping out and throwing an old can of spray paint down the hall and as hard as he could. Once it hit the far wall, the thing began to rush towards it. Dwayne pulled me out and pushed me in front of him. Not giving myself time to think, I dug down deep and ran towards the stairs with everything I had. I knew that just around the corner the door to the stairwell would be waiting. But then, a place where the wall had been crumbling away fell. That was all it took. Suddenly we heard the thing behind us shift and scramble back in our direction. "Don't look back! Just keep running!" Dwayne shouted as he noticed my head start to turn. It sounded clumsy but fast as it crashed against the hallway walls in its mad dash for us. It was gaining on us, but we were able to get to the door just in time for me to snatch it open for both of us to run through. Luckily, the doors opened from the outside of the stairwell, so it wasn't able to push its way through the thick metal barrier. We felt like we were safe, if only for a second. But we weren't. Only a few moments later, we heard a new sound coming from just beneath us, inside the stairwell. I stood with my back against the hard cinder block wall, paralyzed as a large arm reached its way up from the lower level and wrapped its thick clawed fingers around the railing. As the once white fluorescent lights began to redden, whatever was attached to the arm was now pulling itself up behind it. Dwayne gave me another shove in the right direction. "Move it!" he shouted, snapping me out of it. We ran up each of the flight of steps until we finally made it to the top. As we crashed through the door into the hall, we were met by a few people who remained in the hall to see if we would make it back. There wasn't many. The ones that were there seemed to have been mildly frightened by our sudden return. We only took as long as necessary to explain what happened before we returned to Dwayne's apartment. And after taking some time to calm myself back down, I sat down to write this. I'm going to rest now. I have to be up before 3 to stand watch with Dwayne. So far, it only seems like the old man in the bathrobe can come up this high, and only close to 3. But I'm not sure why he doesn't try to get inside the rooms, and I'm not sure if he won't suddenly start to either. Kat's nightmares are getting worse. She started waking up screaming now, and I don't know what to do. Apparently the same thing is happening to the rest of the children on the floor. None of us know what to do about it, especially me. I don't know how to deal with something like that, even under ordinary circumstances. It's been several days since the last time I wrote anything, but I feel like I have to put something in here. He, the old man, he spoke to me tonight. Just like every night around 3, I saw the lights outside go red, and then his shadow as he passed. But then he stopped, and knocked. For the longest time, I couldn't move. I barely even wanted to breathe. Then, another knock. I was trembling at that point, but I still hadn't moved towards the door. Not until I saw something move underneath the door. The shape of a hand, or the shadow of one with nothing to cast it, crept through the light and curled one thin finger several times, commanding me to approach. Finally, I gave in and took a few small, quaking steps towards the door. "Give me the girl," the wretched old voice snuck through the silence. "What?" I whimpered at the sound. "Give her to me and I'll let you and your friend go. Just open the door and toss her out into the hall and you are free to leave this place. I give you my word." "What do you want with her?" I asked, knowing I couldn't possibly want to hear the answer. "I don't need a reason. And you wouldn't need to know if I had one. I will return tomorrow night with the same deal. But know this, you can't keep me out forever. Soon I will be able to enter and take her. When that time comes." And with that he went silent, and I saw his shadow leave, moving to the next room. I keep trying not to think about what that man could possibly want with Kat, but my mind keeps going to dark places. There's no way I'll be able to sleep after that. It's only been a few minutes, but I just heard something in the hall. We all did. And we're all pretty shook up. No, that's not right. Traumatized. We're all traumatized. Not long after that man left, we all heard him start making the same offer to people a few doors down. And it became pretty obvious what the choice they made was. The sound that poor child made as they pushed him out into the hall. And the parents saying over and over again how they were sorry, but they had to, if they were going to make it out of here. I don't think I'm ever going to get over it. I'm so tired, but I have to get ready. Me and Dwayne have to go look for food. The lights are starting to flicker too. I'm not sure how much longer we'll have power. I'm not sure how it stayed on this long, but I think it's finally giving out. The old man has been coming back every night and whispers the same deal through the door. He makes it to everyone else with a child in the room as well. And occasionally, someone takes the offer. I have to cover my ears so I don't have to hear the screaming and begging of the child and the regretful apologies of the parents or the people who had taken one of the recently orphaned children in. The next day, people would be missing. We're never sure if they were actually allowed to leave or something else happened. But they were always gone without a trace. I don't think I'll be able to make another entry. I'm already writing this as fast as I can. In case someone finds this, they can know what happened. Dwayne's gone. He didn't make it. We had to go back to the second floor. There wasn't anything left on the other floors. But as we were walking around, the floor gave way and we both fell through to the first floor. I could have never imagined what it would look like down there. I know what's been happening to the people who took the deal. They were nailed up along the wall upside down, their stomachs split open and their insides hanging out, but they were still alive, if only barely. I made eye contact with one of them as I picked myself up off the pile of rubble, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for them. I just turned away and helped Dwayne up. "Are you?" I tried to say, but he hushed me. "Be quiet," he whispered. "I'm trying to hear if anything's coming for us." Him saying that made me hold my breath and listen through the ringing silence. As I listened, I looked around the nightmare around me. The lights were constant red down here as they flickered, desperately clinging to life. Rot and decay surrounded us in the forms of endless corpses, and barely standing walls and the smell of death pouring into our lungs. I couldn't even bring myself to take a single step. Then I noticed where we landed. I was just a few doors away from my apartment. It seemed like an eternity ago, the last time I was here. My body, almost moving on its own, began to slowly lead me towards the place I called home not too long ago. I had to see it. To see if my parents were there. To finally know what happened to them. "What are you doing?" Dwayne tried to ask me as I left him standing on the pile of debris. The door, which seemed to have been broken down, had fallen to pieces across the floor. As I carefully and quietly explored the almost unrecognizable apartment, I quickly came across another collection of bodies huddled towards the back. I saw my mum. I recognized the gold necklace she always wore hanging around her neck as she laid there on the floor in front of my bedroom. Choking down my tears, I reached out and pressed my hand against the door that crumbled away at the softest touch. I stepped into the room where another body was waiting, one closer to my size. Was she trying to save someone else's child? And that thought brought me back to reality. At that moment, all I knew was I needed to get back up to Kat for some reason. "We need to go," I whispered harshly to Dwayne, who was looking relieved to hear me say that. "Then let's go," he answered as we made our way back out of the room and quietly into the hall. So good to see you down here. A morose voice cut through the silence from behind us. Oh, don't worry. You're free to go back up. I have no intention of doing anything to you at the moment. The old man cackled to me as he stared into my terrified eyes, slowly shuffling towards us as he spoke. What about Dwayne? I asked, tears flowing free from my eyes. He'll be staying with me, he said, wrapping his arm around Dwayne's paralyzed shoulder. Don't worry, I won't harm a single hair on his head. He continued speaking as he led Dwayne along with him down to the basement. This one should do, he added, plucking a single hair and tossing it behind him as they both vanished into the darkness. Oh, and you should hurry. Last night I made a different offer to everyone on the floor. The moment the sound of his words hit my ears, I tore myself away from the petrified state and flung myself full speed in the direction of the stairwell. I climbed the stairs as fast and frantically as I could, hoping he didn't mean what I thought he did, and my mind cascading through the horrible things I might find when I got there. Barely able to stand, I snatched open the door to find a crowd gathered in front of Dwayne's apartment. Christina fighting desperately to pull Kat from the group who was demanding she let her go.
That old guy made us all the same deal. All we have to do is give him this one girl and we can all leave.
The obnoxious man from earlier yelled at Christina over the rest of the crowd that he seemed to now be leading. Not having the time or energy to try to talk to any of them, I sprinted towards the group and drew one of the knives from Dwayne's kitchen and drove it deep into the man. This shocked everyone enough for the combined strength of me and Christina to free Kat from their clutches and pull her back into the apartment. It's been about an hour since then. We managed to barricade the door back, but they're still trying to get in, and I don't think it's going to be much longer before they do. We told Kat to hide in a small space we found under the kitchen counter and stay quiet if they get in. I'm going to hide under the couch, hopefully for someone to find at this point. I'm sorry, Kat. I tried. I really did. I'm so sorry. I live in an apartment building, and weird things have been happening. Over the past few days, I've noticed a lot of residents have been getting pretty irritable. They snap at each other over the smallest thing, and I've noticed other stuff too. People's pets keep running away. It seems like every time someone opens a door, there's a cat or a dog trying to bolt out and take off. And people keep talking about smelling rotten eggs. So they brought in some guys to check for a gas leak, but they didn't find anything. We still don't know where this smell is coming from. Today I saw two men fight in the hallway in front of my apartment. It's not unheard of to see the occasional fight in the building, but both of these men were known for being really nice and got along with everyone, especially each other. So word got around about it pretty fast, and that seemed to make everything worse. I'm supposed to be babysitting this girl upstairs later, but I think I'm going to call and say I can't make it. I don't think I should be wandering around the complex at night with things like they are now. It's crazy as hell out there.